Okay, so let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. So let's begin as usual with our meditation and motivation. So go ahead and set up your posture. Getting into a comfortable position so that you can sit still in a relaxed way. With your back straight. And feel your energy going down away from your head into your body. You can even bring your consciousness to where your seat meets the cushion, the root of your body. And then we can spend some time thinking about our intention for engaging in these classes. Why are we even learning about Buddhism? To be happier, to solve our problems, to have a more calm approach in the world. To learn. And then we take it further and make the intention that we are studying to have a positive effect in the world, in the people around us, on our environment, our communities, our countries. That being wise, compassionate people has an effect in the world, makes it a better place, relieves suffering for others. And this is our motivation. That by working on ourselves, we're better able to lead others, to show others, to affect others in positive ways. And then we can spend some time becoming aware of the sensations in our body. Whatever they may be, just accepting that this is how our body is feeling right now, and just noticing it, being present with it. We can notice that in order to be aware of our bodies, we have to have awareness. So there is awareness that is attending to the sensations of the body. There is presence, there's consciousness, there is observing, watching. And then we can become aware of the constantly changing nature of those sensations. That if there's pressure, or if there's tension, or if there's pain, or if there is a nice feeling, warmth and relaxation, that each of those sensations is always changing. So we can just choose one and observe it and watch. And notice how it rarely changes real suddenly. Most sensations change slowly, like a process. And of course, our awareness of them changes moment to moment, very quickly, constantly changing. And now we can narrow our focus more specifically to the openings at our nose where our breath is going in and out. So in the area of the nostrils. See if you can notice where the air is going in and out. The left nostril, the right nostril, or both nostrils. What is that sensation? See if you can notice the cool air comes in and slightly warmer air goes out. And if you get drawn away from the breath, just bring it back with gentleness, with kindness. Again, allowing the mind to rest on the breath. The non-conceptual physical sensations of the air at the nose. And then stay with it. If you notice thoughts trying to draw you away, choose not to. Choose to stay. Okay, so coming out of the meditation, we'll do a little bit of review from our last class. So we talked about, I wanted to share this quote from Milarepa. I can't read it very well. Let me see. Okay, so Milarepa was a very famous Buddhist saint. He was from Tibet. He's actually known as one of the founders or major saints for within the Kagyu lineage, which is one of the schools of Tibetan Buddhism. And he's the example that is given of attaining enlightenment in one lifetime, because he started off when he was younger with a lot of troubles, and he did some very serious things. He was a master of black magic, and he caused many people to die when he was very young. And as a result of that, he realized that that he was basically damned, that he had done these horrible things, and he wanted to find a way not to carry that anymore. And so he looked for a teacher, and there's a story, the story of his relationship with his teacher is very profound. His teacher was Marpa the translator. And so after he studied with Marpa and purified actually with Marpa for a long time, he went into a cave and meditated a lot. And so, and he would teach, when he would teach through songs. Okay. So this is from one of his songs, and it's about death. So fearing death, I went to the mountains. Over and over again, I meditated on death's unpredictable coming. And I took the stronghold of the deathless, unchanging nature. Now I am completely beyond all fear of dying. So this deathless, unchanging nature has to do with what we're working with in terms of becoming more focused on our center, becoming more connected to our own inner wisdom, and this understanding that although we all die, that we also continue, our minds continue. And yes, so that's part of it. There's much more to that deathless, unchanging nature, but it's this understanding that I think so often we feel like death is the worst possible horrible thing that could happen, and what we find is actually we can start to work with death and meditate on death and get used to death in such a way that it doesn't become such a horrible thing, that we, for ourselves, of course. So we can learn to trust in change, in transition, in that this is the nature of how things are, and that we don't have to be afraid of this ending kind of time. So let's see. So what we talked about was a meditation on death to start to get used to this, the sense of the fact that we're going to die, that all of us are going to go through this transition eventually. And so it makes a lot of sense to spend at least some of our time in our life getting used to that idea. And recognizing that we're all going to die, we also use our lives more well. Our lives become more precious, especially the situations that we have that we can see that are so positive. And we call this, if you're familiar with Tibetan Buddhism, we call this our precious human life. So each one of us, because we have met the Dharma, because we have a mind that can understand the Dharma, because we have the, the ability to understand the teachings and put the teachings into practice to work with our minds. These are aspects of our precious human life, and they aren't necessarily going to last forever. And so now, while we do have the circumstances, we aren't, overwhelmed with suffering, by sickness, so we have no energy or no time to work with our minds. And we have access to the teachings. I mean, we have a computer. Right now we have a Wi-Fi connection, and we have time, to learn about the teachings. I mean, this is incredibly precious, and so we don't want to waste that. And recognizing change, that everything ends, that everything falls apart, that all situations are moving through this process into something else, transforming into something else. That this is actually starting to recognize this means when we have what we have, we see it as more precious because we know it's going to end, and absolutely going to end, instead of, sort of deluding ourselves or denying or just forgetting that it's changing all the time. We tend to, again, it's because of our perceptions. It's our way of looking at the world, that we see things as unchanging. We believe they're going to last forever because they exist the way they do right now. And that's something that our minds do in order to be able to interact with things. I couldn't, if I thought this cup was going to disappear in a second, then I would never pick it up to drink from it. I would never even pour anything into it. So we have to have that sense of permanence. But at the same time, we're trying to have a sense of not trying to hold on to it staying the same thing, any of our situations, any of the people that we love, any of our, our own characteristics, that these are all in process of change. So we have to hold this balance, don't we, between permanence and impermanence, because that's kind of where things exist. Okay, so we talked about these, so death is definite, the time of death is uncertain, we don't know when it's going to happen. Let's see, and what will help us at the time of death. So spiritual practice is something that we do throughout our lives. We do spiritual practice so that we can make our minds more peaceful, more happy. And then if we do this practice throughout our lives, when the time of our death comes, it is much more peaceful. It is much more relaxed. There is a lot less fear involved. Okay, so spiritual practice is the thing, something that, and when I'm talking about spiritual practice, I'm talking about what is not material. Okay, the opposite of material, then we would define as spiritual. And like the opposite of physical is non-physical. And so we talk about working with the mind. Okay, and then we talked about some terms. Oh my goodness. Temporary and eternal, permanent and impermanent. And the point on this slide was that permanent is unchanging, and something can be eternal and also be impermanent. For example, the mind. The mind is beginningless and it is endless, but at the same time, it is constantly changing. Okay, so this idea of the mind being both eternal and impermanent. We talk about conversion of matter, that matter is also eternal in some ways. I mean, for now, right? During the Big Bang, matter changes, but there's also always conservation of it. It turns into something else. Okay. And this idea of gross impermanence is the change that we can see, and subtle impermanence is unavailable to our senses. We cannot see the constantly changing nature of things. So then how do we know that it's constantly changing? We don't know it through seeing it. but we can know it through our reasoning. Okay, so this is two different ways of knowing something. So one way we can talk about knowing something is the fact that I see it and I sense it, right? So if I built a fire, I can see that there is a fire here because I can feel the heat, I can see the flames, I can smell the smoke. It's very present, right? So I know there is a fire. Now, if there were a fire like on a mountain in the trees, and all I saw was smoke, and I didn't actually see the fire, I could use my logic, I could use my deduction and say there is fire on the mountain because there is smoke. Okay, because I can see and smell the smoke, I can deduce, I can use my reasoning and say there is fire. And that's the same way that we know of subtle impermanence, of the constantly changing nature of things, is that because I can see gross impermanence, I can see like between, over the course of 5 or 10 years that my body has aged, I know that that change has happened constantly. Okay, in order for the gross impermanence to have happened, the subtle impermanence has to have been happening that whole time. Okay, all right. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say about that. Now I want to move into loving kindness, the four immeasurables, and compassion. So let's look at, this is another quote, and this is a quote from Rob Priest, who is a student of Lama Yeshe's for many years when Lama Yeshe was alive. And he's, after he studied Buddhism and practiced Buddhism for many years, he became a Jungian therapist. And so he's from the UK. He still teaches, does retreats, and he's written several books. You may have heard some, The Psychology of Tantra. And then this quote comes from The Courage to Feel. And he wrote this even before, coronavirus, and I think it's so applicable to our time right now. If we are to cope with a turbulent and troubled world, and with challenges in our daily lives that can push us to the limit, the solution has to be an inner one. When I reflect on my own life, I can see that two potential choices are there whenever I am really challenged. I could contract into an increasingly fearful, defensive, self-preoccupied place where I become obsessed by security and a sense of my own self-preservation. The idea that I need to look after number one, me, at any cost. Alternately, I could begin to open and see that I am not alone in this plight and that others are suffering too. I could open my heart to the struggle in others' lives and hold an understanding that we are all equal in wishing to be happy and free of suffering. So this quote, what it asks us to do is to open our hearts instead of closing them, instead of making our lives more, now we're asked to isolate, right? We're asked to do the social distancing thing, which seems very contrary to connection and love. And yet internally in our own minds, we can actually become so much more compassionate for so many people who are struggling in the exact same way that we are. So many governments are saying stay home, don't go out, and we're all having to deal with this, whether it's boredom or uselessness or fear or all this contraction that Rob is talking about. We're having to contract our lives to these very small spaces, and yet when we open our minds, when we open our hearts, it's actually a much more comfortable, a much more joyful, a much more loving place that we can be in with our minds. And we can do this even if physically we are limited. Even if physically we can't expand to others, we can do it with our minds. And eventually then, when we do it in our isolation, in our own minds, then when we start to interact and go out into the world again, we already have a sense of this warmth, of this feeling of love and kindness and compassion for others, because we've been practicing it already in our hearts. And then our first response, instead of fear and distrust and protection and contraction, is actually one of going outward, of sharing, of connecting, of seeing our similarities, of seeing our interconnectedness. And this feeling, it brings, again, like coming back to our motivation of being a really positive influence in the world, of affecting change simply through changing our own minds. Okay. So this is the development of something called bodhicitta, which we're going to talk about in a second. But one way, that didn't work. Okay. So one way that we can start to approach this idea of opening our hearts, developing a more warm heart. And many of us already have this kind of sense of knowing how to love others, okay? I'm sure everyone has had this experience of loving others. And so it's a matter of making that more, right? For more others, okay? So most of us have the experience of, we love our close friends, we love our family, we love our parents, our siblings, our children, our pets. So we do have a sense of being loving and kind. But oftentimes we limit that to only a few people, right? Only our immediate circle, maybe our coworkers that we get along with, or, some of our customers that we're close to, and of course our family and friends, but to start to expand it, to make it more broader, to really open our hearts, which is, an incredible feeling, this just limitless feeling of love and compassion. It just brings so much joy, and it creates so much resilience and strength if we have this kind of attitude toward others, an attitude, to the world. And so they're called the four immeasurables because there's the understanding that sentient beings are infinite. Okay, so there are infinite minds, and they are constantly being reborn over and over in many different realms. And there isn't just the earth, there's lots of different places that we can be reborn. And so this idea of loving every single being, of infinite beings, makes it immeasurable. It makes it infinite loving kindness, infinite compassion. Okay, so that's why it's called an immeasurable. Okay, so loving kindness in Buddhism, we started to talk about this a little bit when we talked about love before, but instead of seeing love as more in the romantic sense, seeing it in the sense of that warm heart. So we have this feeling, everyone knows this feeling of when you love someone, your heart opens. Okay, you have a sense of caring about them. You have a sense of wanting them to be happy, wanting things to go well for them. Okay, sometimes this sense of love gets overshadowed by our expectations of what they can do for us. Okay, so sometimes we have love for others, and then we add strings, right, with strings attached. Okay, so having a sense of love with no strings attached, in the sense of, I care about you and I want you to be happy, and this is all that I want. Okay, no matter how it affects me. Okay, so it's a sense of a very pure love. Okay, oftentimes you know, when we're teenagers, and our parents are very patient with us, and they're very accepting of us in our rebellious stage, when we're fighting or when we're withdrawing from our parents carry this, you know, carry this love and this acceptance and this unconditional, you know, kindness toward us, even if we're harming them, even when we're going through those stages of where we're rejecting them in order to figure out who we are. And this is the sense of love, and that is not sort of polluted by this expectations, by these strings. Okay, and so this is the kind of love we're talking about. So when we say the prayer of the four immeasurables, we say, you know, may all beings be happy. Okay, and that's an expression of love, and have the causes of happiness. So it isn't just the surface sense of happiness. Okay, and once we have this sense of wanting all beings to be happy, and wanting you to be happy, and you to be happy, and you to be happy, and feeling that open-hearted, you know, loving kindness toward them, then at the same time, as our caring increases, when we start to notice that they're suffering, then um, we want their suffering to go away. We do not want them to suffer. Okay, so compassion becomes about this sense of connection. I care about you, and I feel hurt when you are suffering. I feel sad when I know that you are suffering. Okay, when I know you're feeling the same suffering that I have been through in the past. You know, if I have, you know, been sick, or if I have been scared, or if I have been, you know, lost a loved one. Okay, so we have that sense of empathy, and then in addition, we have this sense of, and I want to remove it. I don't want you to feel that suffering anymore. Okay, and once again, we're talking about expanding this, not simply to those beings that we know closely, but to everyone who is going through this. Okay, and it's not pity. Okay, sometimes compassion is mistaken for pity, in the sense of, I'm up here and I feel sorry for you because you are suffering. Okay, pity is like somehow seeing ourselves as superior, that we aren't going through the same thing, and have never been in those circumstances before, and now you, poor thing, you're down here and you're suffering. Okay, and that's actually mistaken for compassion sometimes. And so compassion is actually having this sense of connection. I've been through it too. I know what it feels like, and I want your suffering to go away, just like I want my own suffering to go away. Okay, oftentimes we start with our own self-compassion so that we can clearly be compassionate toward others. Okay, and then the next one was empathetic joy. Okay, empathetic joy is being rejoicing, we also call it. It's being happy for others when good things are happening for them. Okay, so it's usually considered an antidote to jealousy. Okay, so jealousy is um, when we feel like someone has something that we want, we're attached, you know, we really are grasping at whatever they have, and we don't want them to have it. We want us to have it. Okay, and so there's an anger there. There's like a rejection of that person because they have what we want and we don't have what they have. Okay, so rejoicing is the opposite, because we become happy that they have what they have, whether it's positive qualities like intelligence, or, you know, kindness, or you know, or physical things, if they have, you know, cars or money, or they have beauty, or that sort of thing. We can just be happy that they have those things. Okay, part of it is that they've created the causes and conditions to have those things, which shows that actually we can do that same thing. We can, you know, be in the same situation to create the causes and conditions for us to have that. And also, The fact that they have happiness, that they have good things, means that they've done good things, right? It means that they have done positive actions in their lives that create the situation for them to have good things in their lives. So we rejoice in that, that they are happy, that they have good things. And then this actually, you can't feel jealous of someone and angry if you also want them to be happy at the same time. I mean, we can go back and forth, of course, but the more you feel empathetic joy for others, the more that you can be happy for them, and the less you be angry if they have good things. Okay, so this is our antidote to jealousy. So when we do rejoicing, it's like, I had this described, one of my teachers described this, it was really cool. So you know how when you're when, say you go to a sports event, so you go to a football game or you go to a basketball game, and you have all the players who are, you know, competing, and they're, you know, they're throwing the ball or kicking the ball or whatever, and they get a goal. Okay, when their team gets a goal, you see all the fans that jump up and start cheering, and you see the team, you know, start cheering and, you know, patting each other on the back, and, you know, yelling and you know, like throw, you know, jumping up and down and waving their arms and smiling and patting each other on the back and hugging, you know, this is rejoicing. This is what rejoicing means. So when we talk about that, what is that sense of celebration? Okay, and it's also real closely related to gratitude. Okay, but I don't want to go into that right now. But this is rejoicing. So what is that sense of being happy for something happening, you know, for others, that the team is doing well, you know, that you know, your little, you know, that your child passed a test, you know, what is that feeling? And that's rejoicing. And that, like, again, we're uplifting our minds, we're bringing, you know, a higher vibration to our minds, and that just affects, you know, the whole world. Okay, and this is part of bodhicitta. Okay, and then the last one is equanimity. So equanimity has to do with how we treat others. So I've already introduced this a little bit, but this idea of that we treat others based on how they treat us. So we label others friend, enemy, and stranger. Okay, so friends are those who treat us well, who do things that we like, who are easy for us to get along with, who are easy for us to love. And enemies are those who irritate us, who harm us, who do things that make us angry, okay, who hurt those that we love, okay? Those are our enemies, and we reject them, and we try to get away from them, and sometimes we even want to hurt them, okay? And then we have strangers we're indifferent to. We don't really care, whatever, you know, you can do whatever you know you want, it doesn't affect me, and I don't really feel anything about you. Okay, based on how they treat us, whether they treat us good, bad, or if they do nothing for us. Okay, so then equanimity starts to shift that balance. Okay, and we'll probably do meditations on this, we'll see, but there are meditations that you can do on this that start to see that those labels of friend, enemy, stranger are from our own point of view. And if we were able to take their point of view, we would see that in fact, they are all the same. They are the same in wanting to be happy and not wanting suffering. Okay, so no matter what they do or how they are acting, they actually are trying to be happy just like us. And they don't want to suffer just like us. And so their basic, we talked about this in terms of their basic goodness, our basic goodness, this sense of wanting to be happy, again, really relates to this idea of love. Okay, so love is wanting ourselves and others to be happy. Okay, so our basic goodness is already present within us because we want to be happy. We do everything 24/7 to try to make ourselves happy. And this is the basis of what love is, okay? And it's just a matter of starting to see that it's not just me, right? This me, this idea of an isolated, concrete, unchanging, permanent me doesn't exist. We actually are much more fluid than that. We are a process, and we are much more connected to others. So it's starting to reflect that reality of connection. And they want to be happy just like us. They don't want to suffer just like us. Okay. So they also have this basis of loving kindness, of compassion in their hearts. Okay. And starting to see that. And then it becomes much easier to open our hearts up to even people who don't affect us one way or another. Okay. And people who harm us. And of course, the people we care about. Okay, so let's do some question and answer if you have about that, or we can talk about impermanence more if you want to, or death. I'm open to anything we've talked about so far. Any questions?
I'm going to start by unmuting Ayush Kuntia, so you can now ask your question out loud.
Hi, Ayush.
Hi. It has always been said that while doing meditation, have a purpose of participation. Know what is the pure purpose of doing meditation, or know the purpose of why you are in spirituality. But I am always wondering, and I do not get any solid answer to this. I do not know why I am in spirituality, why I am doing meditation. So, but still, I continue to do it over and over the years. So I want to know the answer, how to go ahead, and I still have to know a particular answer to this, why I'm in spirituality?
Okay, so you don't know why, and you do it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you get anything from it?
Yes.
What do you get from it? From doing meditation? What is the result?
For some moments, I feel peaceful, and
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, you feel peaceful. Okay. So it
Resolved
makes
for
you,
some time.
okay. So it makes you feel good to meditate.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That's probably why you're doing it. Because it makes you feel good, right? If it made you constantly gave you pain, right? If it was like burning yourself, if every time you sat down on the cushion, you felt like you were burning up, you probably wouldn't do it, right? No. Okay. So most likely it's because it feels good, because you get some benefit from it. It makes your mind more peaceful. That's most likely. Okay. Now, when I'm talking about motivation and intention, I actually am asking you to go beyond just the feeling good. Okay. I'm asking you to consciously generate another purpose for doing it. Okay. We do it because it makes us feel good. And then we add to it and we say to ourselves, I am also doing it because it will help others. Okay? Because by my being more peaceful, others will feel more peaceful. Okay? So it's not that necessarily I already know why I'm doing it, but I make it consciously my purpose to feel good and to make others feel good, to spread that peace. Okay, so we can add to our intention. It's like when we eat, all right, we eat a good meal and that meal tastes really good. So I am eating so that I can, because it tastes good to eat, right? Because I eat, you know, whatever, good food, momos, let's say. I eat momos because it tastes good, right? But then on top of that, I can say I am eating momos to have energy to help others, okay? So I can add to my purpose, okay, for doing my meditation. Okay, sure. Next question.
Next, I'm going to unmute Disha Gulati. You can ask your question now.
Hi.
Hello. You just muted again.
Oh,
So
I
let's,
think.
oh, there
wait.
we go. Oh, Disha? Disha?
1 second. There we go.
Can you?
Now I
you
can hear. Now I can hear you. Yes.
Yes, so I just have this one question, which is about non-attachment. So
Okay.
when we say that, we are not attached to things and sometimes it tends to hurt people around us, looking at the fact that, we don't really respond to things and emotions in the same way as they do.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very difficult for people around us to accept the fact that we are less attached to things and our environment than they are. So how to
Yes.
cope up with that?
Well, you can start to explain some of the reasons if they're open to hearing, your explanation of how being attached, let's say, to material things brings more suffering to people. Okay. So, like being attached to material things actually contributes to fear and worry and loss.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
right,
so, if you can explain that to them, then they can see more clearly how actually you are happier without things. Usually, people want you to, if it's your parents in particular, and they want you to have like, lots of material things. They want you to be
Mm-hmm.
materially successful. Usually, what's underneath that is that they want you to be happy. And they think that the way that you will be happy is by having all these material things. Okay.
Right,
So you can reassure them and say, first of all, I'm okay with the material things that I have. So I'm not talking about giving everything up, right? I'm not talking about having nothing, right?
right.
Because you have to eat and you have to have, medical care and have to have shelter and all those things. But you don't have to necessarily make that focus, and that makes you happier. So if you can explain that you agree with them, that they love you and they want you to be happy, but that the way of being happy actually is not the same way that they think, right? It isn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily their ideas. So explaining that to them.
So actually, this is, in reference to the current relationship that I am in. I feel that my partner, when I try to explain it to him, that because he is someone who is more hurt in the relationship, and he is not okay with the fact that I'm the one who's less hurt in the relationship, or I'm the one who's more balanced.
Mm,
So then he thinks that I'm not able to understand his viewpoint, and that
mm,
all the suffering in the relationship is only going to him, and I'm the one who's not at stake.
mm, mm.
So sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a really good book about this because it probably goes a little deeper than just attachment to things or
Mm-hmm.
attachment to people. So it's called, and it's not particularly Buddhist, but it's helpful. It's called Getting the Love You Want.
Okay.
And it's a couples therapy book, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, what they talk about is how we try to get our partners to meet certain needs that weren't necessarily met in our earlier lives. Okay.
Okay.
And how you can move through that to start to communicate about it. What is the need that he's actually trying to get met from you, and how can you support him in getting that need met, but still keep your own identity. And usually there's something that you're doing as well, with him, some need that you're trying to get met with him. See, we often marry people who compliment us in ways that are very positive. They have qualities that we really like, and then they
Right.
also have qualities that we're trying to resolve certain things in ourselves that we want to fix with them, right? So figuring out what those are and communicating about what those are, that's what this book is about. And that it can be really helpful to both of you, of course, to read it.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right, sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
now I'm going to unmute Roshni. Now you can ask your question out loud.
Thank you and good morning, Venerable Drolma.
Good morning.
My question is, you spoke about death and the fear of death. But I've never been afraid to die. Even tomorrow, if I'm told that I'm going to die tomorrow, that's not going to bother me. What bothers me is whether so permanent, that truth. The problem for me is, what worries me is, how am I going to die? Will it be a sudden death? Wow, that would be nice. But if it is years of being bedridden with a painful disease, that worries me.
Okay. Okay.
In context.
So, okay. So you're asking what you can do with your mind to die peacefully, even if it's very sudden, or if it's very extended, or if it's very painful?
More than that, to deal with it now, as in, how can I accept death in any form that it's going to come to me?
Okay.
It's not
Okay.
death, but the form in which it's going to come.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. And the form of death that you are most afraid of is the one where suffering lasts a long time.
More than suffering, it's that I would be a burden for the caregiver.
Okay. Okay. So it's the sense of losing your independence, and that others would be harmed by your long death.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because as we get older, we lose our independence, and we start having to rely on others more and more. And it's something that that people who are aging give up slowly. They start to give up their independence and have to rely on others, like not being able to drive anymore. And they're even now in this coronavirus, they're even more limited in some ways. And so I think what we can do is to start to get used to that idea, is see how we already rely on others so much. Okay. Like, for example, this, we rely on others for all of our food, where I'm not a farmer, I don't grow my own. I wouldn't even know how, I might be able to produce a few tomatoes, but that would be about it. I would starve, right? And yeah, so many. Our shelter, I would not be able to build a house. Already just going, and meditating on this interdependence already. All my clothes, I can knit, but someone has to make the wool, and so many things, every single day, that I would not exist without relying on others. And so getting used to that idea that you already do. And then the other side is that others already rely on you, that you already are, a part of benefiting others in whatever you do. And generosity, you can practice generosity. And then when it's time for you to be taken care of, then you don't feel that like guilt or self, like you're a burden to others, because this is the nature of things. We're already relying on others, and others rely on us. And the more that we can be positive for others, the more that then when it's time for us to have to rely on others, we'll feel comfortable with that. Okay. So it's also this, both sides. I think that if we're selfish all the time, then I think that's more there, then it becomes more scary, because we think others are going to be selfish and not help us. Okay. So the more that we can reach out in whatever way we have, if you don't have time, maybe you have money, maybe you don't have money, maybe you have time, there's so many ways, kind words, considerateness. There's so many ways that we can help others. And having the intention, even when we're doing things that seem to benefit only ours, we do it so that we can benefit others. We make it this this connection, this interdependence thing. And I feel like then when it comes for us to rely on others, it'll be much easier.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's do another one.
Yeah, I'm going to unmute Alice.
Hello, good morning.
Hi.
So, my question is about like impermanence and relationships, because I understand the nature of impermanence, that people change and feelings change over time, but I still feel like when that happens, then the pain is unbearable, despite the fact that I have this knowledge of impermanence. So I'm just wondering then what to do if this knowledge doesn't help me when the impermanence of relationships happen. Then yeah, what's the use of me just having this knowledge?
Okay. So two things. The first one is that if you simply have the knowledge of it, it means it hasn't gone very deep in your meditation. Okay. So we have levels, you know, of knowing things. And the more that you get familiar with the idea, which is what meditation actually is getting familiar with the idea that things are constantly changing, and get used to the fact that your relationships are going to change, that they're going to end, or they're going to be something completely different in, you know, 5 or 10 years or something. The more you can get familiar with that idea, then when it happens, there's no reason why it should hurt. Okay, because you're already used to it. The pain comes from, and this is my second point, the pain comes from when we grasp onto them staying the same. Okay, when we believe that they have to be exactly that way, like I always have to have this person in my life in order for me to be happy. And if this person ever were to leave my life, I could not be happy. And that's just not true, right? We can be happy without people in our lives, but we have this belief, we have this clinging and this grasping onto people and things staying the same in order to make us happy. Okay, so recognizing that these external things are not the ultimate source of our happiness. I can be happy having the memories of this person. I can be happy with new people in my life. I can be happy with, you know, lots of change, because the truth is that we've been happy with lots of things in our lives in the past, and we are happy, still can be happy now, even if they're not here. You know, and even if, you know, like I had good friends for, you know, lots of best women friends, you know, and girlfriends when I was a little kid, and they're gone now, but I can still be happy, right? So it's this belief that I have to have this person, they have to be this exact same way, and then otherwise I won't be happy, and that's where the pain comes from.
So is there like an analytical meditation that could help me work with this grasping, or I need to have this person in order to be happy?
Yeah. So meditations on attachment, and there's actually there's an app called Insight Timer. Have you heard of it? Insight Timer. Okay, it's an app. Do you do apps much? Yeah. Okay, so on the app they have guided meditations, and I'm sure Felipe will write this up on the chat. And the guided meditation, there are two by a nun named Thupten Chudron. So can you write that name, Felipe, too? Thupten Chudron.
Yep, I'm writing it down.
Okay, if you go to search in that app for Thupten Chudron, then you will see she has two meditations on attachment, and they're guided meditations, and they're really good. Yeah, they're really good. I've done them quite a few times, but you have to do them over and over again. Okay, and Sravasti Abbey is the name of where she teaches, so that's good too. Yeah, Venerable Thupten Chudron, Sravasti Abbey. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's do some meditation. Thank you.
All right. Oh, especially trying to keep your body grounded and relaxed and your back loosely straight. Going back to a posture which is conducive for letting the body go back to its natural state. And as usual, we start by letting the bell bring us into the space of the body once more in order to settle down, in order to calm and to relax. We start by observing the space of the body, the realm of physical sensations, where the point of contact of your body and the surface that you're sitting on becomes clear, allowing the awareness to become grounded. And in order to relax deeply and briefly, we can allow ourselves the luxury of 3 deep breaths, and breathing in fully and completely. And I want you, as you let go of the breath, to give a little sigh, letting go of all the tension, breathing in fully once again, relaxing more deeply, bringing in peace and calmness, bringing out worries, concerns, and tension, and letting the body settle down in its natural state. Now letting go of observing physical sensations, letting go of the realm of the body, the material things. We bring our attention into the space of the mind, allowing mental images to arise. And so begin by imagining that you're standing in front of a door and gently opening that door. It shows you inside a very spacious room. Going into this room, you notice that it's very simple, very plain, no decorations on the walls, which are all white. It has very nice big windows that allow some light to come in. But there's absolutely no furniture, nothing else except at the very center of it, where there is a very tall mirror, taller even than yourself. So imagine that you walk to the center of the room and position yourself right in front. The surface of the mirror is completely pristine, not a speck of dust or any pollution on it. So it reflects back at you an image of yourself that is absolutely clear. So take a moment to get a good look of yourself. See yourself from head to toe. Look into your own eyes and recognize that the reflection in the mirror is that of a human being, of a person who experiences different things, sometimes happy things, sometimes difficulties. And yet you know that deep within, you want to experience as much happiness as possible. And how wonderful it would be if you could experience this happiness. So looking at yourself in this mirror, you give rise to the thought of loving kindness deeply from within your heart, thinking, may I be well and happy. May I have all the causes and conditions that bring me happiness and joy. May I be peaceful, loved, and experience good circumstances. May I be well and happy. And imagine that this wish of loving kindness manifests from the center of your heart in the form of a wide sphere of light, which comes out of your chest and floats into the mirror. Offer it gently to yourself. Offer it to this person standing in front of you, this reflection. And allow this sphere of loving kindness to go into the surface of the mirror. And as soon as it goes in, another one comes out. As you give love, you receive love in return. And take a moment to notice how this reflection receives the sphere of love in its heart. And as you do the same, notice your reaction to it. Imagine that everything that you need, everything that you wish for to be happy is granted. And feel the joy. See the smile in the mirror. Feel the happiness within your heart. And reacting to this act of loving kindness, the surface of the mirror starts to shine, pure white light, very bright, filling the entire room. Granting you all the happiness you deserve. And then slowly going back to normal. The brightness decreases and the surface of the mirror is clear once again. This time, to your surprise, the reflection has changed. This time in front of you, you have the image of a loved one. Perhaps a family member, a partner, a friend, somebody who you know and care about. And yet, when you move, the reflection moves, which comes to show that in front of you, again, you have a simple reflection of yourself. So looking at this person into their eyes, accepting that in front of you, you have another human being just like you, who experience difficulties, but regardless, they want to be happy as much as possible. So giving rise to this thought of loving kindness once again, from deep within your heart, looking at this person, sincerely wishing, may you be happy. May you have all the causes and conditions that bring forth your happiness. May you be peaceful, joyful, and loved. May you have good circumstances in your life. May you be well and happy. And once again, allow this thought to manifest in the form of a sphere of white light floating towards a mirror to the heart of this other person. And again, as you give love, you receive love back. And you take it with an open heart. Notice the joy within yourself and also the joy of the other person reflecting back at you. The smile on the face of this loved one, which you can feel happy about. Once again, the surface of the mirror begins to shine bright light, filling the entire room, touching your body, your heart, with this clearness and purity. And as it goes back to normal, once again, the reflection has changed. This time showing the image of a stranger, a person you may not know very well, perhaps you don't even know their name. And yet, you can recognize the common ground between you and this person. They are also a human being who wants to be happy, So use this opportunity to wish them from your heart, with loving kindness, all the happiness in their lives. Giving rise to the thought once again, you don't know your name. From my heart, I really hope and wish that you're happy, that you find all the causes and conditions that bring you happiness and joy. And that this wish manifest once more and flow to them. Offer this loving kindness from your heart and be open to receive it in return. Notice how this person becomes joyful, smile on their face. How wonderful is that? How beautiful is that? Feel the joy yourself. Allow yourself to smile. Once again, the mirror starts shining bright light, brighter than before. And as it goes back to normal, this opportunity, the image reflected back at you, is that of a Buddha. Take a moment to pause and to recognize yourself in this reflection. And taking a step forward, walk towards the mirror, and as you do, it becomes brighter. Taking another few steps, you can actually go into the surface of the mirror, walk into this light, and allow this limitless potential of your mind to manifest. And simply let everything dissolve into this light. And just take a moment to abide with this clear nature of your own mind, the source of all loving kindness, the inaccessible fountain of love, which is already within you. And simply rest in this state. Extending the wish towards all sentient beings. May all sentient beings Coming out of the meditation, maintaining the thought of loving kindness, we go into the dedication. And from your heart, wishing all beings to be happy, you can go through these lines and consider that as we dedicate. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled when a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored in finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever diseases are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain, to dispel the mysteries of the world.
All right, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day or night. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.